So back during that golden era of funk, really in the 70s, how closely did the Isley Brothers monitor both the what some of the rival bands or competing bands, if you will, were not only playing but also their success? And I'm talking about bands like Earth, Wind and Fire, Ohio Players, Commodores, Kool and the Gang. How did you look at those other bands?
We always paid attention to what was going on in the business. We wanted to know who had what record out. We were fans. Like I remember us waiting for the next Stevie Wonder album. I said, as soon as it comes out, I got to go get it. Check it out, see what he did. Marvin Gaye's new thing. It was a respectful kind of competition, if you will. Earth, Wind and Fire. We wanted to hear their next album. We followed. We listened to it. We listened to it, the instrumentation. What they sang, what they sang about. You know what I mean? Sly's new thing. And I was always a student of music, and I was a student of pop music and R&B music. I studied the records. Me and Ernie sometimes and Marvin, we talk about, hey, what this guy played, what he played, who wrote it, and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So for me, it was great to have all that great music and all that variety of music. That's how we did the covers, because we were into everybody's music. You know what I mean? Carole King. We did a lot of covers out there. Crosby, Still, Nash and Young. Seals and Cross. The Doobie Brothers. We did a cover of that. We listened to everybody. And that was part of the beauty of that era, is that you had so much variety of music coming out, like every week. Some other big band or big single artist would have a great album come out, and hey man, we'd have it. We'd be listening to it, man. We were in college, because we were in college part of the time we were with the group. Man, in college, we get a break, come home, play that album, man. Come back to the dorm, play that album, check it out, be listening to it. And I think that really helped creatively, because it was good to have all of those different things coming at you, music all the time. And that when you immerse yourself in music like that, that helps me create. That helps the juices flow, you know what I mean? And sometimes you get inspired from other people too. I remember Marvin Gaye's What's Going On album. That inspired me, because I said, wow, nobody ever did anything like this before. This is really great. Each song flowing into the next, consistency of message, performance was great, very inspiring.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
So getting back to the, we talked a little bit about the concerts. Was there anyone in particular that you kind of tended to go out with often as an opener or as kind of a co-headliner? And I didn't get to see the band live until the late 70s at the LA Forum, and I think at that time I'd have been with like Graham Central Station, and I don't remember who else. But who did you go out with, and do you feel like? Did you feel then like you brought it as hard, on stage as you did in the studio?
Yeah, we always tried to bring it hard, but we toured with a lot of different bands back then, and that was the great thing about that era, is because first of all there was a lot of bands, a lot of different kind of bands. You had Casey and the Sunshine Band, and you had Graham Central Station that you mentioned. You had the Brothers Johnson. We toured with them too. That was a great experience touring with them. Then you had artists like Teddy Pendergrass. We toured. They were on the bill with us on a tour. New Birth. You name it. Just about, we toured with them. And the Gap Band. They were on a tour with us. Another good group. So it was like what happened, how we put together those things were like whoever had big records, we'd like to have them on the tour because it makes a stronger ticket, And usually it was like three groups on a show that we did, like when we did the Coliseum, for example, LA Coliseum, I think. We had maybe 3, maybe 4. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly, but we didn't have a long roster because, we give everybody enough time to do their show. And usually that would take from 8 to 11, 11:30, and then you had to be out of the building, So usually it would consist of 3 bands, possibly a local opening act, just, when people are coming in, nobody's in the seats, they're just playing just to warm up everything and test the sound and everything, So, but we toured with a lot of different people, and especially, with the jazz festivals, because there was a lot of people on those shows, and everybody that had a record usually was on the jazz festival, P-Funk, everybody, Aretha Franklin. But generally how that went was like whoever had a current record that was doing well, we wanted them to be on the show to make a strong ticket,
And, how did you stay grounded during those tours? There's so many temptations of the road and all kinds of things. What was that environment like? And, is there 1 or 2 stories from the road that you can recall that were kind of particularly memorable or funny maybe?
Well, yeah, I mentioned P-Funk. We were in, I think it was Kansas City, and they had the mothership and everything that they would have on stage, but they were suspended above the stage, until they came on, and generally they had to be the last people to come on because of the rigging and all of that. So we came on right before them. But when we came on, we got about a minute into our first song, and everything cut off. I mean, all the electricity cut off. The band, nobody. The only thing you could hear was the drummer playing back there because acoustically you could hear him. Yeah. But it was like it was off for about a minute, but it seemed like an hour. Because Arrowhead is like this huge stadium. And all the people you hear the crowd cheering on, and nothing. And it was like everybody looking at each other like, oh no, what do we do? And I guess somebody finally found the plug and plugged it back in, and it came back on. But that's got to be the craziest thing that's ever happened, in a show, in a big show too, because that was like big name artists was on there, a lot of big name artists, and we survived it though. I don't know how, but we did. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, well, I was a long time mobile disc jockey, and sometimes big crowd with that, and have some kind of technical issue, and lose power. I've been there. I was actually on a cruise ship once, doing one, and the ship lost power. So man, you talk about anxiety. I can only imagine.
Oh, it was brutal. Yeah.
One thing that I regret is that, if you look on YouTube, for example, you see a lot of clips from all kinds of musical acts. But from that period in the 70s, there's not a lot of footage of black acts or especially funk acts and that sort of thing. Do you know if there was any film ever taken of the Isley Brothers doing their thing?
I'm pretty sure that they were. And for a lot of years, I've tried to find it, but I haven't been able to. Because the reason I know is because I remember on a couple of occasions, I was told that there would be taping the shows. I was told that, but then I never saw the tape. So I think there's a tape floating around somewhere of a couple of our performances, but I haven't been able to run them down. Even Isley-Jasper-Isley, I know for a fact some of them were taped, but I can't run them down. I don't know who has them.
Wow, that would be monumental in my opinion to uncover some of that.
That was great because that was a really great tour with Luther Vandross. You know, we did. We were like the supporting artists on there, Isley-Jasper-Isley, and every night was like standing ovation. Every single night, with us and with Luther. You know, the crowds was just, you know, on their feet. You know, we ended with Caravan of Love. Everybody was standing, you know, with their cigarette lighters or whatever they had on, and they was, I mean, it was just a magnificent thing that was going on in the audience. And I wish I had a tape of it so that just people could just see it, you know. And then Luther's performance was great. He was always great, and they stood for him too. It was just a really, really inspiring tour.
You know, during that period from 73 to 83, with all that success, I grew up in Los Angeles, and at least for that area, you know, rock radio did not play black acts much, even no matter how much they were rocking. If you weren't Jimi Hendrix, you were going to be lucky to be heard on those stations. So, you know, the Isleys, perhaps, you know, more than any other band during that era, really had a lot of rock influence in what they did, along with maybe Funkadelic, but they were, you know, kind of different altogether. I think the Isleys were more accessible in their sound. So, you know, why do you think there was that resistance? And was it something that, you know, the band ever talked about or wanted to have that kind of crossover? Because really, as far as crossing over, Fight the Power and Who's That Lady were really the big crossover singles. But I think so much of it should have gotten that kind of exposure.
Yeah, I felt we should have, maybe. You know, those albums were big, and they were a lot of them could have crossed over, I felt, you know. But you know, when things become political, you know, that's when you run into instances where, you know, I don't think Luther Vandross crossed over as much as he should have. You know what I mean? Because I think his music, it would have been acceptable on any format. You know, I don't know. It gets political sometimes, and that's when I think the business is not the best it can be. I mean, it should be about music and music on its merits. That's what I've always felt. No matter who it is, they should be played on every station, no matter what. If it's good, play it. You know, forget the color of the artist. If it's good, play it. And that's how I've always felt. I don't see music that way. You know, I mean, some people might. Well, who's the artist? I don't care who the artist is. Is it good? Let me see it. Let me hear it. You know, that's all I care about. And that's all I've ever cared about. So when I see stations being resistant because, you know, an artist may be black or an artist might be white, you know, I feel that's wrong. Why are you resistant to a good piece of music? You know what I mean? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. It never did. So I think that's when the business isn't the best, and the audience doesn't get a full spectrum of what's offered out there. You know what I mean? I think right now, you know, England is doing a good job of doing that. They're playing everything. You know, they're playing everything. Reggae, they're playing jazz, they're playing R&B, they're playing pop, they're playing everything. And I think, you know, that's, you know, maybe America should look at that. Take a look at that, because they're playing music. You know what I mean? They're not playing race. You know, and I've always felt that was wrong. You know, when somebody said, "Oh, this guy's black," or "Oh, this guy's white," we can't play that. Why not? Is it good? You know what I mean? Why aren't you playing it? So I can see maybe when they say, okay, we want to be a country station or something like that, because, you know, maybe that's a little different. But at the same time, country, you know, some country stuff. I remember when country stuff was played on Top 40. You know what I mean? And it's because it was good music. I mean, I think I think there should be a reevaluation of that, you know, in America. That let's play music, man. Hey, let's try that. Let's try playing music and see what happens instead of playing categories. See what happens.
Well, I mean, because of that, I think, you know, Ernie should be much more highly regarded and better known in rock guitar circles than he is.
I believe he definitely would be, you know, because, you know, if he got the exposure, more people would know about him. You know what I mean? It just goes that way. But when you start, I think when you start limiting things on the basis of something other than music, that's when you run into the problem. That's when you run into the problem of, hey, you know, we could have done maybe a little bit more if we were more open. You know what I mean? If we were more, if we just dealt with music just purely on the basis of music. Because I think that's a big complaint of a lot of artists, you know, is that, hey, you know, the record company didn't push us this way or the other way. Well, my question is, why does the company have to push it one way or the other? You know what I mean? Why not just service everybody and on the merit of it, choose? You know, that's more fair.
Absolutely. I think that's a topic we could spend an entire interview on.
That's right.
That's a deep topic. Before we move on from that, though, just, you know, focusing on funk music in particular, you know, why do you think, Chris, that it, you know, hasn't caught on in terms of being, you know, more thought of as a mainstream music, you know, genre of its own, you know, right there with blues and with rock and with country? You know, why is it that funk is kind of, you know, kept swept under the rug a little bit?
I think one reason is you don't have a lot of musicians now producing it. Funk is something, okay, and I've said this in different interviews. Funk is something you have to live, and if you're not a musician, it's almost impossible to live funk. You know, okay, you can sing good, but you cannot sing funk, really. You know, as great of a singer as James Brown was, right? His voice alone is not funk. He had to have those beats and those rhythms and those grooves. See, that's funk. And musicians create that. And so now, if you don't have that music being produced and delivered, you know, to, say, you know, radio stations and promoted and marketed, some people are going to say, oh, well, you know, maybe funk's not happening anymore. You know, maybe let's try to play another. Because when I was coming up, like I said, I mentioned all the bands. You know, there were so many bands that could play funk, and there was a lot of it out there. And as a result of the production of the music, it was, you know, it was being, every week you had another funk song coming out, you know, from somebody. And then it was like, all right, let's go 30 years in the future. How many bands are out there doing anything? Where is it? You know what I mean? I record, only reason I can record funk on my albums is I can play it. You know what I mean? How many people can play it? That's what I mean. Funk relies on musicianship.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it relies on, and that's why I started off talking about the vocal thing. The vocal thing is great, you know, but hey, who can play it? Where's the Larry Grahams? Where's the, you know, the Johnson brothers? Where, you know, where's all these funk people at? Where are they? I don't know.
They maybe went into hip hop instead.
You know, I hear house stuff. I hear, you know, hip hop. I don't hear any funk because that requires musicians. You know, and musicians that have a certain knack for counterpoint and syncopation and, you know, all those things that make up a funk groove. You know, every drummer is not a funk drummer. You know, every keyboard player is not a funk keyboard player. Every guitar player is not a funk guitar player.
Yeah. Well, you know, you mentioned, you know, folks like yourself that, you know, have it in your DNA pretty much.
Yeah, you have to live funk. You have to live that music, you know, and understand the different nuances of it, and you know, like I said, the counterpoint, the rhythm, the touch. Sometimes it's just touch. You know what I mean? I was talking to my son the other day. He's writing music, and I said, you know what? I said there was a part in that lady where I didn't even play notes really on the clavinet. I just played a feel and a rhythm, and the rhythm was the thing that worked. You know, in the break, in the rhythmic break. I said, you know, I could have played a lot of different notes in that, you know, segment, but it didn't work as well as just the groove, the feel, you know. And sometimes it's just that. You know, and that's what I mean. You know, knowing what to do, when, how, and all that. That's what funk is made out of. And if you get some musicians in a room, they'll tell you it's hard to teach a person how. You know, you just have to be around people to do it and play it. You know, that's why the Stones went to Muscle Shoals, man. They wanted to learn about the blues. They said, we're not gonna, you know, learn it in England here. We're gonna have to go where the blues is being played. So they packed up and went to America, you know. And hey, we're on that, you know. Keith Richards, he got with those guys, you know, and yeah, okay, and he's a blues guitar player now, you know. Well, for many years, but he had to go where it was and immerse himself in it, you know. And then, you know, he's a bad dude on guitar, man. But you know what I'm saying? You got to go and get into it somehow. And musicians aren't getting into funk anymore. You know, they say, okay, we just do a beat and let's, you know, play a couple of chords and we got a song. You know, usually that's what happens. That's not funk.
Well, but if you look at the you know, funk progenitors that were around in the 70s and early 80s doing it, that are still around today, like yourself, or, you know, Confunction or Lakeside or these kind of bands, it seems to me that, you know, when they make records, they're mellower now. They're not bringing the funk as much as they used to on record when they do a record. And I'm wondering, you know, of course you mellow with age, but, you know, why do you think that might be? And when I look, you know, particularly, Chris, at similar bands like on the rock side, say like an AC/DC or ZZ Top or, you know, the Stones or Aerosmith, they still seem to kind of bring the rock like they did many years ago.
You're right.
But some of the funk bands kind of shy away from it, and they're not continuing to bring the funk. And maybe if they did, it would help inspire more younger, you know, musicians.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that, because I think a lot of them sometimes will maybe try to go close to a trend that's happening, you know, rather than bringing the authentic thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like, I don't agree with that. You know, I put Man Up on the one album, my album previous to Share With Me. Man Up is funk. I don't care. I mean, it's the heavy funk. And that's, if I'm gonna play funk, that's what I'm gonna play. I'm not gonna play something that's nice and light, you know, that might go on in this format and that, or else I'm just gonna do a ballad. I'm gonna do something else, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna play a funk. But if I'm gonna record a funk record, like I have something called Funky Thing on Share With Me, it's funk. It's not halfway, it's all the way. You know, and that's what I believe in, recording the real article, if you would. You know what I mean? I'm a firm believer in that. And that's why I still record my music the way I record it, is because that's what I've done for like all my career. And a lot of my fans know me that way. They identify my music that way. So I'm gonna bring it the way I've always brought it. And I think that's why that there might be, like you start off saying, you know, funk, not a lot of funk records, is because people wonder, well, should I do the original thing? Should I do the original article? You know, and my answer to that is yes, because if you don't, how's a person going to know what it is? How's a person going to know one thing from the next? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a watered. Why bring a watered down version of something? You know, I don't follow that one. I know people are trying to sell records, but at the same time, there's no guarantee that a watered down version is going to sell either. You know what I mean? Especially as crazy as the business is now.
Yeah,
there's no guarantee that's going to sell either.
Yeah, that's you know, authenticity. I mean, that's
yeah.
I
mean,
you
might as well go for the original thing.